But I do want to hit very briefly about Antifa and just tell you why this is so important. When President Trump talked about designating Antifa as a terrorist organization, it's not about name calling. It's not saying, well, we're calling you bad people. It's a very specific and important and meaningful designation that actually helps. It helps the government be able to use because they fell into that status. It allows them to use that status. It releases new legal power against them. Number one, there was a big effort among celebrities to raise money to send, of all things, send money to the Minnesota protesters to bail out people who got arrested who were burning down buildings and smashing windows. And so the celebrities in this country, and others I'll mention in tomorrow's show, were actually sending money to help bail out the mob, bail out people who were protesters, thugs, destroying things. So what happens when Antifa's designated terror organization is, number one, celebrity calls to provide material support for bail donations becomes material support for a named terror group, a crime. You cannot collect money for a named terror group. It makes prosecution under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the famous RICO Act, makes prosecution under RICO much easier. This was an idea Ted Cruz, our great Texas senator, Ted Cruz has been raising, and others. It also allows people who are even affiliated with Antifa to possibly be prosecuted for their conduct. So the point of it is, this is a getting tough thing on Antifa. And I want to wrap up the show by going back to the point I was making at the start of the show after our great conversation, in between a great conversation with Star Parker. Nobody who is out smashing windows, burning buildings, lighting police cars on fire, none of those protesters, no one from Antifa, no one of the faction of Black Lives Matter who encourages violence, none of those people care at all about Black America. You have to get that through your head. The people who were doing the kind of protests, they may say, I'm standing up for Black America, I'm standing up against police violence. These are simply anti-American terrorists. Antifa is a terrorist organization. They are a fascist organization trying to parade themselves as an organization fighting fascism. They are the fascists. They're out there destroying property, destroying businesses owned by low-income Black Americans. Most of these protests are happening in low-income areas. So Black families who've worked for decades to build up a business, to own their own business, to be self-sufficient, their lives are destroyed, their livelihoods are destroyed, and economists will tell you, a massive study was done, and more recent economists have been commenting on this. It takes neighborhoods like that decades to come back. So do not believe for a moment that Antifa, Black Lives Matter, any of these groups advocating violence have any support, concern, or care at all for Black America, for low-income communities, for anyone other than their radical leftist agenda, which is the destruction of America. I'm gonna run out of time here today, so I gotta go, but I really want to urge you to think about that. Do not get lulled in by anything they say. It may be, do not get lulled in by anything they say. Well, we're here to stand up. If you're here to stand up, then you support the investigation of police officers who do these things. You support peaceful protests. Peaceful protests, I'm all in favor of. That's what the First Amendment is all about. The right to peaceably assemble. You can protest, you can wave signs, you have the right to address the government and tell them your grievances, the right to redress your grievances. You have the right to present when you're bothered by the government. You have the right to protest. You don't have the right to destroy other people's property. You don't have the right to destroy cities. You don't have the right to force cities to live under lockdown because they're afraid you might come and hurt them in their communities. This is happening all over this country. This is orchestrated. This has nothing to do with sympathy for George Floyd. It does not honor his memory. His family's been begging, his family, his fiance, brother, begging America, say, please don't do this. Protesters, stop doing this. This does not honor my brother. But they won't stop because what they're doing has nothing to do with caring one iota about what happened to George Floyd.